Hoover realized the challenge was not hunger, as in post-war Europe. Soviet Russia faced the greatest famine in history. Feeding 1 million children would only scratch the surface. He needed to feed adults as well. That would mean funding from Congress. Yet he worried Americans would be reluctant to spend their tax dollars on people whose communist government many saw as monstrous and intent on spreading revolution.
We had had a Red Scare in our own domestic politics in 1919, 1920, a general strike in Seattle, a bombing of the home of the Attorney General of the United States, never solved. There were many reasons to fear that left-wing agitation, even of the communist variety, was a serious menace.
Hoover had a reputation not just as a humanitarian, but also as a staunch anti-communist. In post-war Central Europe, he had helped thwart Lenin's attempts to expand communism by threatening to withhold relief supplies from countries sympathetic to the Bolsheviks. That worried the American left.
Left-of-center people legitimately, I think, suspected that his motivation here wasn't pure, because he had this counter-revolutionary record with respect to food relief in Eastern Europe. To them, a socialist revolution or socialist regime in Russia was an experiment that should be encouraged.
In Hoover's mind, there was no conflict between feeding people, giving sort of straightforward humanitarian relief on the one hand, and using food as a political weapon to stop Bolshevism. Bolshevism was wicked, it was evil. Stopping it was humanitarian.
Hoover felt the example of American efficiency and generosity might do more than just feed the Russians. That was part of his pitch to President Warren Harding.
He wanted, and I think implied, that food famine relief could perhaps lead to a regime change and that it might get rid of the Bolsheviks.
He thought that by bringing in Americans with their talents and administrative expertise, their efficiency, if you will, that they could serve as an example to the Russians. Lenin was afraid that he would try to sneak arms in with food and try to organize a resistance. No. Hoover was not trying to do that at all.
Hoover's primary argument for helping the Russians was an economic one. Feeding Russians would help American farmers who were sitting on huge surpluses. Hoover asked Congress for $20 million to buy surplus corn for an expanded relief program for children and for adults. Some in the House feared it would bolster the Bolshevik government. With unemployment reaching 5 million during a recession, some senators favored projects that would create jobs for Americans or help veterans in distress. Hoover's supporters and the Farm Belt lobby carried the day. On December 22, 1921, with Harding's backing, Congress approved the purchase of surplus corn. Hoover also insisted the Soviets buy wheat seed to plant in the spring to secure the harvest of 1922. The ARA campaign in Russia would be the largest relief operation to date, and the first to provide relief to an adversary. The challenge was to get the food almost halfway around the world, where up to 100,000 Russians were dying every week.